Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm LangZhong. Happy Chinese New Year of the Tiger 2022, my friend. May you have peace at every age. Enjoy this festive to the fullest and make this celebration best of them all. Last year, the year of the ox, brought vaccines to a global pandemic, and I hope the Lunar New Year will bring healing and joy with the year of the tiger. Tiger is commonly associated with characters like bravery, courage, and strength. It is an uplifting animal that gives people hope and allow me to add health. LangZhong is a famous historical and cultural city in Sichuan province in China. On the outskirts of the city, there is a great Buddha temple. On a stone wall next to the temple, carved two Chinese characters, Huxi, Tiger Spring. Legend says that 1,000 years ago, the king of Chinese medicine, Simiao, used the knotweed to successfully treat a tiger's legs. According to the legend, there used to be a steep mountains, dense forest and lush grasses, and many precious medicinal materials grew there. One day, when Simiao came here to collect herb medicine, he suddenly heard sounds of groans. He hurriedly crossed the mountain stream. He saw no one but a big tiger with hanging eyes and a white forehead lying on the side of a huge rock, looking at him eagerly. The tiger was in pain. Simiao stepped forward and knelt down. The tiger slowly lifted its paw and placed it on his knee. When Simiao saw that the leg was red and swollen, he hurriedly took out the medicine from the medicine sack, smashed it, took the mountain spring water and adjusted, put it on the tiger's leg, and fed the medicine to the tiger as well. A few days later, the tiger's leg was healed. From then on, the tiger was inseparable from Simiao, and it became his mount. Simiao rode it uphill and waited to collect the medicine, as if walking on the ground. In order to commemorate him, later generations built the Medicine King Hall in the big Buddha temple. Because the medicine cured the tiger's leg, they call it Polygonum cuspidatum, which means that it cured the tiger's leg, and it is often used to treat joint ailment. The painting of Simiao often has a tiger in it. Whether Simiao really cured a tiger's leg with knotweed is now impossible to verify, but another tiger story is loud and clear and well documented in Chinese history, the Flying Tiger Squadron. This is the first American volunteer group, AVG, of the Republic of China Air Force, nicknamed the Flying Tigers. AVG was formed to help oppose the Japanese invasion of China. In essence, they were mercenaries hired by China to fight against Japan. Operating in 1941 to 1942, it was composed of pilots from the United States Army Air Corps, Navy, and Marine Corps, and it was commanded by Claire Lee Chennault. The pilots were recruited under President Franklin Roosevelt's authority before Pearl Harbor. Its mission was to bomb Japan and defend the Republic of China. But many delays meant that they first flew in combat after the US and Japan declared war. Though only in combat for less than 7 months, the group became famous at the time for its ability to inflict outsized damage on Japan's better equipped and larger aircraft fleet. Their victories came when Japan seemed unstoppable. The airplane they used, Curtiss P-40B Warhawk. The nose of the Warhawks were often painted with shark teeth. Since sharks do not fly and a tiger with wings possesses mystical power, hence, Flying Tigers became its nickname. In the West, 1939 is considered the start of World War II, but in Asia, China and Japan had been at war since 1937. China was already fighting its own civil war between the nationalists of Chiang Kai-shek and the communist forces. The two sides came to a truce to fight against the Japanese. At that time, China had little air power to fend off Japanese bombings. Chiang Kai-shek hired Claire Lee Chennault as an advisor to its Air Force. Chennault, a U.S. Army aviator, instructor, and a tactician, was 43 years old at the time. Due to his poor health and disputes with his superiors, he was pushed into retirement from his position with the Army Air Corps in 1937. After he landed his job in China, Chennault was asked to come survey the readiness of its fleet. After the inspection, he found that out of 500 airplanes that China had, only 91 could fly. By 1940, after losing backing from the Soviets, China desperately needed more planes. At the time, the US was not officially part of World War II. But President Franklin Roosevelt was concerned about the prospect of Japan defeating China and turning its sight on the US. Chernow traveled back to the US, pulling what strings he could to get planes. With the help of TV Song, a Chinese official who was also Chiang Kai-shek's brother-in-law, a deal was worked out to allow China to buy 100 American-made Curtiss P-40 fighter planes. What about the pilots? Chinese pilots were poorly trained. Chernow managed to get Roosevelt to allow some of the U.S. military pilots to resign their commissions in the U.S. military and go to China as mercenaries. Basically, because it was against the international rules for any American military person to be involved in the conflict over there. By using Chinese funds to buy the aircraft and the supplies and pay the salaries of the proposed crews, the U.S. government could retain a facade of neutrality while helping China against the Japanese. To make recruitment easier, pilots and mechanics were offered pay that was often more than double what they were making before. According to the DoD's history, in summer and the fall of 1941, 99 traveled to Asia along with about 200 support crew. About a dozen of them were Chinese Americans. The AVG's base was in Kunming in southwestern China, far from areas under Japanese occupation. But to get airplanes there was challenge enough because there was no runway. So thousands of Chinese people built them by hand. They didn't have any tools, modern tools. They used their bare hands to build those runways. The Flying Tigers' first combat came on December 20, 1941, 13 days after Pearl Harbor and 12 days after the U.S. declared war on Japan. Japanese bombers attacked AVG base at Kunming. The results? The Flying Tigers shot down 9 of 10 Japanese bombers. Their only loss was one Flying Tiger that the pilot crash-landed after running out of gas. He was uninjured, according to the DoD history. So, they were the first Americans actually to have a victory in World War II. In the following days, the focus of their combat quickly shifted to near Rangoon, Burma. Burma was a British colony at the time, and the Flying Tigers would assist the British Air Force in defending Rangoon against Japanese attacks. Burma was of vital importance to China's war efforts. Japan had sealed off China's coast from supply lines, so China depended on supplies coming in from the port of Rangoon over the mountainous Burma Road to Kunming. Fighting continued through January and February 1942 in Burma, and the Japanese controlled Thailand. The victory was astonishing. Flying Tigers were credited with shooting down 299 Japanese airplanes confirmed, about that many unconfirmed, and only lost 12 of their own in actual combat, which is a record that's never been broken to this day. The Curtiss P-40 Warhawk were not as good as those of the Japanese, but by performing certain maneuvers as outlined by Chernow, namely high-speed diving and climbing, the Flying Tiger pilots were able to exploit some weakness in the Japanese aircraft. However, the Japanese forces outnumbered and overpowered the Flying Tigers, and the British Rangoon fell in March 1942. But their efforts slowed down the Japanese advance, kept supply lines open, and helped China continue to fight. By this point, the U.S. was formally at war with Japan, and there was no need for pretense. U.S. military leaders pushed for the AVG to be absorbed into the U.S. Army Air Forces. Chernow rejoined the Army in April 1942. The Flying Tigers continued to fly missions into the spring and the summer, including stopping a Japanese advance over a crucial river gorge in May, after which Japan never again threatened China from the west. On July 4, 1942, the AVG was officially integrated into the new 23rd Fighter Group. A handful of pilots and the support crew stayed on, but most of the men from the original AVG rejoined their previous branch of the military. Others became civilian transport pilots in China or went back to the U.S. to work as civilians. Chernow was promoted to Brigadier General and led the China Air Task Force, which included the 23rd and other units. Later on, he assumed the command of the 14th Air Force in China in March 1943. He stayed in China for the rest of the war before retiring from the military again in 1945. The last surviving member of the original AVG, Frank Lasonsky, died in February 2020. Flying Tigers historians are quick to point out how essential ordinary Chinese people were to the mission. Those who paved the runways did so as volunteers. Chinese villagers also suffered immensely to help when pilots were shot down. The Japanese would go into these villages and they would torture and mutilate and kill the villagers in an attempt to find out where the Flying Tigers were. And in most instances, the villagers would not tell them. They would rather suffer the consequences. Indeed, as Robert Lee famously said, it is well that war is so terrible, otherwise we should grow too fond of it. This concludes my story of Tiger in the Year of Tiger. Happy New Year. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.